Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for your interest in American Experience resources and for all the work that you do with students across the country. It's been a tough past few years. I hope you're hanging in there and well and getting the new school year off to a good start. My name is Carolyn Jacobs. I'm in the GBH Education Department, and I'm calling in from my home in Southern Maine. We are recording using Zoom webinar as our platform, and the camera and mic are reserved for just the presenters. Nikki Siriani from the Education Department will be in the chat, monitoring things, keeping us on track. We'll try to respond as we move along, and we reserve some time at the end. We will stay online till 8:15 if there are questions after the presentation. Many of you posted questions ahead of time on the registration form, and we have looked at those questions and tried to work some of the responses into the presentation. Some of them are beyond the scope of the webinar. In fact, some of them refer to topics like differentiated learning and ELL supports and things that we cover in other of our webinars too. If we're not able to answer your question and you would like to post it again in the chat and maybe even crowdsource a response from your colleagues, by all means, feel free to do that. And I will be getting back to some of you individually with questions that are very specific to public media. We will be sharing the slides, the recording, and a resource document that includes all of the links of what we're showing you tonight. And that will come, those links will come out in an email tomorrow from Zoom. It comes out about 7 p.m., the same time as the webinar, and feel free to share any of that with your colleagues. We are sponsored this evening by GBH, which is Boston's PBS station, and the producer of many iconic series that you see on stations across the country, American Experience being a prime example of that. We're also in the education department of GBH. We research, develop, and distribute content for the equitable learning and development of young people and adults. And we give everything away. Everything is free. We're also sponsored by PBS LearningMedia. And if you're not familiar with this, PBS LearningMedia.org, we encourage you to check it out. PBS LearningMedia is a platform that has thousands of resources for K-12 across the curriculum, but we are very strong in social studies. The site is free, easy to navigate, provides thousands of resources, millions of users, and this is where you will find the American Experience resources that we're going to show you this evening. Within PBS Learning Media, there is a resource called a collection, which is a curated grouping of resources through one URL, one page. And there is an American Experience collection in PBS Learning Media. Later on in the program, we are going to be looking also at the new U.S. History collection, which is also on PBS Learning Media and also includes many American Experience resources. I am very pleased to be joined by a couple of colleagues and a teacher. Chika Ofurum is the Director of Audience Development at GBH and on the American Experience team. She oversees marketing, promotion, social media, and engagement activities for American Experience. We worked together for years, and welcome, Chika. Thank you. And Elizabeth Gardner, my colleague in the Education Department, Senior Project Manager. I think of Elizabeth as a producer because she produces resources. She takes full-length American Experience programs and carefully creates little snippets that you see that tell a story aligned to a standard, and she does a beautiful job, and you're going to see some of her work this evening. And then we have Ricky, our teacher, who is in the room. Ricky is a social studies teacher and a department chair in Arizona. She earned advanced degrees at Arizona State University, and her research interests include American Indian education and policy that impacts marginalized students. And Ricky also serves as a educational advisor as part of the U.S. History Collection. We work with a group, a cohort of social studies teachers to advise us on production, and Ricky has been an outstanding member of that group. Thank you, Ricky. The agenda this evening is pretty straightforward. Elizabeth is going to start out and show us some of the newer American Experience resources on PBS Learning Media, point out some of the features, and we're going to run a clip to show you an example. Ricky is going to show you what an interactive lesson looks like and how she uses it. It's related to World War I, the Great War. Chika will then come on and give you, because you're such a special audience, a very sneak peek of the upcoming season of American Experience. And then I'll come back on towards the end and show you the new U.S. History Collection and have some final announcements. All right, so I'm going to turn things over to Elizabeth.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Gardner, and as Carolyn mentioned, I work with the Social Studies Curriculum and Instruction team to adapt American Experience media for use in the classroom. And I'm also a big fan of American Experience, as I'm sure many of you are. I thought that I would start by showing you how you can find the American Experience collection on PBS Learning Media. So you're going to start here on the first page that Carolyn just went to. You're going to go to the search box and you're going to enter American Experience. And if you put that in quotes, you'll get a more targeted list. So I would recommend that. Next slide, Carolyn. The search results will come up. At the top of the list is the American Experience collection. So you can click on that. Next slide, Carolyn, thank you. And that will take you here to the front page of the collection itself. So you can find all of the resources that have been created from American Experience films and media over the years here, from films like The Pilgrims, The Great War, The Vote, and that's just mentioning a few. The resources are organized into categories that can be explored in that left-hand nav bar. You can also find the newest resources from this season of American Experience. And I'm going to give you a look at a few of those resources that we've produced so far and an idea of what's to come. Thanks, Carolyn. So the first, we kicked off the season with a resource from the film Riveted, The History of Genes. So you can find this in the civil rights category of the collection or by searching under the film name. This is a media gallery consisting of 2 clips. In this resource, students learn how the production of indigo and denim relied on the skills and labor of enslaved people brought to colonial America from Africa, and how these products became vital to the economies of the South and the North. The history of denim reveals the economic contributions of enslaved people, as well as their cultural and social connections to clothing that became closely associated with America. Next slide, Carolyn. As you may know and be familiar with on PBS Learning Media, all of our resources are accompanied by support materials to provide context and scaffolding for use in the classroom. So this would be an example of the teaching tips that will be accompanying every resource, with an essential question to frame the student's learning. So in this case, that question is, how can the history of denim and production shed light on diverse contributions of enslaved people to the early American economy? In addition, each resource also includes the applicable historical thinking skills. So in this resource, students can practice developing an argument and understanding the diversity of historical experiences. Next slide, Carolyn. We also produced 2 resources from the film Flood in the Desert. So in this resource, which is about the building of the 200-mile aqueduct to bring water to Los Angeles, students discover how control over natural resources in the Owens River Valley, California, first displaced the Northern Paiute Native Americans and later a rural farming community. Next slide, Carolyn. So another example of a support material that accompanies every resource are student-facing discussion questions. So these are higher level thinking questions that encourage learners to explore the topic on a deeper level by allowing them to use their knowledge and skills. So they can't, as you all know, I'm sure, they can't be answered with a simple yes or no answer, and they require critical thinking to come up with a cohesive and relevant answer. So you can go ahead into the collection and check out this resource and the other resource from Flood in the Desert. I'm just giving you a little peek at a few of the ones we've produced. So here we're going to watch a clip from a film called American Diplomat. So this is from a resource that we produced. In this resource, students learn how African-American Ambassador Terrace Todman struggled to counter Soviet Cold War propaganda and deliver a message of equality and democracy to the world, while Blacks suffered racial violence and discrimination at home. So Carolyn, if you can play.
The U.S. government was confronting a Soviet information campaign focused on highlighting America's racial violence. A large part of the Cold War was a battle of public relations. Which side would be better at selling itself? To counter Soviet propaganda worldwide, Eisenhower created the United States Information Agency, the USIA.
As a one-stop shop for American foreign policy information, USIA has an astonishing range of outlets. It had Voice of America Radio. It had libraries. It gets USIA material in front of millions of people and is a tremendous part of how the United States is perceived in the world.
The crucial audiences for the American message were countries that hadn't taken sides in the Cold War, the non-aligned nations. Terrence Todman was sent to the most important neutral nation of all, India.
India had been one of the countries most critical of the United States' race relations. It was a country that was independent of the Soviets. It was a very influential country. Indian opinion was important.
As the Todman family looked to India for their first overseas posting, the eyes of the world were focused on Little Rock, Arkansas.
One of the interesting aspects of the civil rights controversies of the late 50s was they were televised.
Little Rock, Arkansas. The white population are determined to prevent colored students from going to the school their own children attend.
This was one of the first times in U.S. history when racial violence could be seen all over the world.
You've got 9 Black honor students just trying to go to school, just trying to get an education. We see white mobs, angry mobs, trying to get at the kids.
The Times of India tracked it day by day. Race was undermining the ability of the United States to appeal to emerging new nations, and it raised questions. Why should we be your ally when you treat people who look like me this way?
Thanks, Carolyn. Next slide. So you can see from that clip the kind of rich, multi-layered, multi-perspective storytelling that makes American Experience so valuable for use in the classroom. This resource, as you can see, is called Civil Rights at Home and Abroad During the Cold War. It's from the American Diplomat. This is an example of a resource. It's a standalone resource. So we did one clip here, one really powerful clip that we felt could tell a story. And then the support materials actually include in this one, in addition to the teaching tips and discussion questions, they include an independent student activity. Next slide, Carolyn. So you can see this independent student activity focuses on developing and practicing one historical thinking skill. In this case, analyzing primary sources. So we're analyzing 2 Soviet posters here and using the information they contain to complete the sentence starters that follow each image. So these are ISAs are assigned to not all, but many of the resources in the US history collection and many of the newer American experience resources. And teachers might use ISAs as in-class or homework assignments. And in doing so, they can be confident that students are learning both content and skills. And we know teachers are charged with teaching both. Thanks, Carolyn. Next slide. Great. So now I was just going to talk a little bit about what's coming for the next of the season, the rest of the season, excuse me. So upcoming resources, we're going to be working with the film Taken Hostage with Chika is going to talk about that and her part of the presentation. So that is premiering in November, and we're going to have probably 2 to 3 resources focusing on why the US and the West installed the Shah of Iran and the controversy that ensued, the revolution and Ayatollah Khomeini, and the hostage crisis and the resolution. And we're also going back and working with Triangle Fire, and that's the film about the shirtwaist fires, the Triangle shirtwaist fires. So we're actually going back and we're making some more robust resources. We're going to be using additional media and creating very robust support materials around those resources. So we're very excited to be working with that film because we know how many teachers use it in the classroom. All right, thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. And I think you got a good taste of how we take a full-length documentary and create resources and then publish them on PBS Learning Media. Before I turn it over to Ricky, who's going to walk us through an example of an interactive lesson, I thought it would be interesting to just spend a minute and differentiate between what an interactive is and what an interactive lesson is and how you find them. So this is a screenshot of the homepage of pbslearningmedia.org. And right on the homepage on the top bar, you can search by subject. And when I click on that, here are my options: science, and this is not a full view, but this is pertinent to social studies. So then I've chosen social studies, and in the next screen, I then have choices within social studies of civics, economics, geography, etc. And down here, this is important to look at. These are the filters to fine-tune your search to really get to what you're looking for. And this is a list. If you click on resource type, the drop down are all the different kinds of resources that we produce. Now, you just saw examples of video, of clips. You also saw a media gallery, which is one where there is more than one video clip in a resource. And then there is something called an interactive, and there are interactive lessons. Interactives encourage students to engage with media in some fashion. They are not putting in responses. They're not inputting their responses onto the screen in any way. They're not saving their work. It is not a fully flushed out lesson. And if you think about things like historical images that have pop-up windows or timelines where you can click on different segments of a period of time and have a different view, or interactive maps, those are examples of interactives. An interactive lesson is a fully fleshed out lesson, and it's a freestanding module on PBS Learning Media. There are hundreds of them for all grades across the curriculum. Students can learn at their own pace about a topic through watching media, primary sources, readings, a variety of engagement and assessment activities, and they can save their work, come back to it at a later time, and of course, their teacher can view it. Teachers can assign interactive lessons right on the lesson page or share it through Google Classroom. So on this slide, I've just given you a couple of examples of what an interactive is. She Resisted is pretty fabulous. It's from The Vote. You don't want to miss that if you teach about the suffragettes. And then the interactive lesson, a couple of examples of that. And this URL right here, characteristics of an interactive lesson, you'll have this link on the resource document, and maybe Nikki can post it. That's a very good tutorial about what an interactive lesson is and how to use them. So here are just a couple of examples, and these all use American Experience media in them. So you can see that U.S. entry into World War II, the question of civil dissent. When you see this launch right here, that's kind of a clue that it's an interactive lesson. And then up here on the left-hand side, you can see we identify what kind of resource it is. A second example, the debate over new immigration, interactive lessons right there in the title. And Trail of Tears, the Cherokee Fight Against Removal. That's drawn from the American Experience program, We Shall Remain, from several years ago. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Ricky now, and you're in for a treat as she kind of walks you through an interactive lesson and shares how she uses it. Thank you, Ricky.
Thanks, Carolyn. Like she said, my name is Ricky Archibek. I am a current social studies teacher. I'm in my 9th year of teaching. And so I wanted to share with you before I jump into a lesson, just kind of where I teach and where I used to teach and where I've used these resources in the past. So at my previous school, we had about 1,250 students. We were a suburban school, and we only had about 12% free and reduced lunch. So it was a much higher socioeconomic group. And currently I'm at a school with about 700 students. We're a very rural school. We have over 50% free and reduced lunch, and we are a Title I school. And I share that with you to let you know that I have used these resources with different clientele, with different kids, and have had success at both schools. And so I've had to change things, and I've had to differentiate things and scaffold them a little different. And I'll talk you through how I did some of that stuff. But I've had success in both places. And so they're fabulous resources to use regardless of where you're at. In terms of my US history class, I'm currently on a block schedule. So that does give me a little bit more flexibility. And just to show you kind of where I'm fitting this in, I split up my US history based on the the Arizona standards into 11 units. So we spend about a week and a half to 2 weeks per unit. And the lesson I'm going to talk to you about today fits within what I would call Unit 7. So we talk about World War I, the Roaring '20s, and the Great Depression. Lots of stuff in one unit. But how I do this is I break down all of my units into 5 to 7 essential questions with matching student objectives. And so I'll kind of show you examples of those to see how this lesson fits in. So the lesson I wanted to talk to you guys about today is one that I have taught at both schools over multiple semesters that I've taught this course, and the kids always really love it, and it always brings great discussion. And so the challenges of making peace with the focusing on World War I, the Great War. And so before I dig into kind of all the awesome parts of the lesson, I wanted to show you how you would assign this to your kids. And so there's a variety of ways to do this. If you go in to the website and you have the lesson that you're looking at, and Carolyn's going to search.
Yeah, Ricky, just give me a second as I have something blocking what I wanted to use here. So I'm going to just search for it right here.
No problem.
Nope. Give me the title of the interactive lesson again, please.
Yeah. So challenges of making peace.
Yeah, that's right.
Should pop it up for you. But that's a great point. When you have the search bar, if you're not really sure what you're looking for, you can use all of those filters and just search in a time period, or say that you want to find a lesson on any subject throughout US history. That's a great way to be able to do that. And it's very easy to navigate that. So if you use Google Classroom, you can just click share to Google Classroom. And it's very easy to share that through. I don't use Google Classroom, and I haven't at either school. And so the best way that I've found to do it is to click assign a lesson. And so if you click on that, you can type in whatever you want the lesson to be titled. So challenges of making peace. And then you can add instructions if you want to differentiate that. If you want specific instructions based on how you navigate things with your kids, you can add those. Yeah, you can determine whether or not it's homework or in class. Those are great things. And then if you scroll down, it gives you more information just on kind of what to expect, and it would give you the launch pad for the kids. And so once you scroll all the way down, you can add slides if you want to include multiple lessons from the website into this, but then you would just click the acknowledgements, and then you would click save and assign. And when you do that, it pops up with several options. And so it gives you the option again to import it into Google Classroom. You can create your own classes on PBS LearningMedia, which works for some people. What I think works best is using the quick assign code. So once you create it, you would just click on the bottom where it says get assignment code. And then it gives you a link that you can copy in and put into whatever platform it is that you use. So at my previous school, we used Microsoft Teams, so I could copy that in. The kids could go in and copy the lesson from OneNote. We currently use Canvas, and so I can just link that into the daily module. But I've also seen other teachers use it in Schoology, pretty much any platform, wherever you can post in that information. So that's an awesome way to fit it into whatever system you use in your classroom. And so once you look and you find the lesson that you're going to teach, Elizabeth pointed these out earlier, but every lesson comes with teaching tips, which is really great because it gives you information about what your kids need to know prior to teaching the lesson. And so it's a great way to see, okay, well, that already fits in with what I'm teaching, or maybe I need to have a mini lesson beforehand to make sure that the kids have this knowledge to get everything they should out of this lesson. Yeah, you can go to the next slide, Carolyn. Thank you. So looking at this specifically in my classroom, just to give you an example, I would lead up to this lesson on the Great War with my first essential question of the unit. So I assume and know from our school curriculum that kids are coming in with some knowledge of World War I, hopefully from world history. And so I focused the beginning of this unit on World War I review, but then also really digging into that American involvement. So thinking about that policy of isolationism, how that starts to change, why the US actually decides to join the war. And then I spend a whole day looking at World War I technologies and setting up the devastation that comes from all of these new technologies and the new weaponry that's being used. And that's going to be essential. That's essential in using this lesson because it really talks about the devastation and the impact in terms of casualties for different countries throughout the world. So just to kind of set that up for you. Perfect. And so thinking about why I use this lesson in my classroom and how I do, my second essential question that I use is thinking through a set of essential questions is how were Wilson's ideas about the treaty and the League of Nations received by the leaders of Britain, France, and Italy? So talking about the Paris Peace Conference and what that looks like. And then thinking through how did most Americans view the role of the US in the world following the war? And so obviously that's the essential question that I use in the context of my course. And what you see underneath that is a screenshot of what the lesson and the learning media as what they give is the key takeaways for the kids. And they almost line up exactly in terms of what the kids are going to get out of this lesson. Perfect. So now we're going to go back live into the website. And I'm just going to take you through, and Carolyn's going to navigate the website for us of kind of what one of these interactive lessons would look like. So once you assign it to the kids, this is what it will look like for them on their end. And so it starts out, it pops up, they can see the lesson goals. And so that's really great. It's starting out with the lesson goals, and then it also lays out kind of the essential question of this lesson, which is great because we don't know, or the kids have a hard time going through the lesson if they don't know what they're looking for. And so this really sets that up for them, which is great because they can do it individually if you assign it for homework or you assign it for virtual learning, or you can go through this and talk through it all together as a class to make sure the kids understand that. And so it moves into kind of an overview. What's great is it gives little snippets of information. It's not overwhelming. It provides kind of the key knowledge, and then it provides a space for kids to take notes. So what I do in my class, and it changes depending on whether it's an honors level or regular level or the level of scaffolding my kids need, is I use kind of the notes section and the different activities along the way as a means to an end. So we'll see that there's more of a summative assessment at the end, but the notes is a way for the kids to organize their thinking in order to have conversations. And then you could go through, you see the incorporation of language arts. And so there's two poems here. You could either have the kids read both, or something that I've done before with higher level classes is I've grouped them and I have split up these poems. And so I'll have like partner one take the first poem and partner two take the second poem. And they'll go through, they'll take notes in the section provided, and then they'll go through and talk through kind of what they came up with. And then they can compare and contrast. And then we can come back together as a class and go through just the main points. And so the majority of that learning is taking place individually or in small groups through that really focused conversation. And so here you have a short clip from the American Experience. It also gives you the transcript, which I've seen some of the kids like to follow along as they're watching, which is really great. But we're actually going to show you this clip right now so you can see kind of what a snippet of this would look like in the lesson. I think it's muted. I think you just have to click the volume button.
Americans are not thinking ever see how simply catastrophic and destructive it was, how stupidly ugly it was, the destruction of human life, limb, property, everything. The war degenerated between 1914 and 18. And once you turn on brutal violence, you can't just turn it off.
In its fourth year, the Great War continued to claim appalling casualties on both sides. Now, as millions of young Americans prepared to ship over to France, Woodrow Wilson was determined that the cause they were fighting for would be as great as the sacrifice he was asking them to make. Events in Russia added another dimension to Wilson's mission. In October, the revolutionary Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, had formed a new government and vowed to make peace with Germany. They offered the world a vision of socialist equality and an end to the corrupt empires that had oppressed workers for centuries.
Lenin, who was in his own way as great a speaker and a propagandist as Wilson was, said that we're going to build a new world order. This is the end of the divisions among nations. We're going to build a different sort of world. And I think Wilson felt he was under some pressure and perhaps obligation to make the American position very clear and possibly stake out a leadership role for the United States in any peace that was to come.
On January 8th, the president traveled down Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol. Before a joint session of Congress, he reiterated why he had felt compelled to enter the war. Then, in 14 separate points, he outlined a plan for the war's end. The 14 points were Wilson's creation, but it was George Creel and his Committee on Public Information who had proclaimed it to the world. The CPI had been created to shape public opinion of the war at home and abroad. It did such thorough work that German soldiers advancing into Russian towns found walls plastered with Wilson's 14 points, in German as well as Russian. Thanks to the CPI, Wilson had become a savior to friend and foe alike.
So what's great about these video clips is that they're short, and so it keeps the kids' attention. But it also, as you can see, there's multiple layers to it. So it's providing context to the immediate question, but it's also setting up things that we're going to talk about later on, which is great because for some of your higher level kids, they're already making those connections. And for some of the kids who may need more scaffolding, when you visit those lessons later on, it's not going to be the first time they've heard them. And so they have that context to be able to kind of grasp onto. And so the video sets up the 14 points. You can go down and you can look at the 14 points in detail. And then it gives you the option to go in and to highlight some important parts of the speech. Okay, so you can go in and the kids can go through this individually. I like to have them go through and at least attempt to read it individually. They can highlight some of the key points if you want them to look at all of them, or maybe there's one part that you want them to look at. And then they can go ahead and submit that, and that will be a part of their submission. Perfect. And then after that, and all of these, you could break it up. You know, I have a block schedule, so I have a little bit more time. You could have kids do kind of the legwork at home and then come back together and discuss it. There's another video clip here. We're not going to watch that one today, but it also just brings in kind of that multidimensional understanding. And then after this video and those short pieces of information, you can click the review it button, and there's a short quiz in there that the kids can take to check their understanding. And then it really gets into the economic impact, which is great. I always make connections back to kind of the casualties that were mentioned at the beginning. And then this breakdown by country, which is really great for the kids to be able to talk through. So you can look through and you can see they give you information on Britain, France, Germany, and the US. You could have them work through this in small groups, or you could break them up by small group and have each group look at a different portion and then talk through it as a whole class. And then if you go through and you continue through to look at the piece and the fairness, there's another video here. You can look at the transcript as well. And you can see that there's a place for them to take notes and look through and organize their thinking. And then finally, thinking through those British and French perspectives, which is great in terms of having the kids compare and contrast what they see from a US perspective usually, but then really tying in those foreign ideas, again, taking notes, organizing their thinking, which is great, especially when you move to the next slide or the next page of the lesson, and you have the final assessment there or assignment where they are going through and they're putting together all of this information. So they can go through and they can actually look through how the leaders differed in their goals, and then they can save their information as they type it in there. All right, so a couple things that I wanted to point out before handing it over to Chika is that at the beginning where you click on the teaching tips on the main screen before you launch the lesson, you can see the teaching tips over on the right. When you click on that, it's going to give you kind of a study guide or a grading guide, which is awesome for new teachers or awesome if you've never taught the lesson before. And then it also provides for you built-in extension activities, which are fantastic if you want to use it as an extra day for the whole class, or for students who work through things very quickly and you just need that scaffolding to get them continuing in their thinking and being engaged in the process. And so just kind of showing you what comes next in this storyline of American history, which is how I like to teach my class. We would move on to then, after thinking through this lesson and thinking through the Great War, we'd return back to this domestic idea of looking at economic policies in the US and then thinking through the social changes. So there's a couple of interactive lessons on the website that are fantastic. I've used parts of both of them before. And then if on the next slide, there's a whole range of just different options that you can incorporate into lessons that you already have created. So there's media galleries, there's videos, and as you can see from the numbers, there's 61 galleries related to that next time period and 209 videos. So depending on where you're going after, there are so many different resources that you can use, whether it's just a 10-minute chunk of class or you're looking for something for the class as a whole.
Great.
And now I think we're going to hand it over to Chica, and she's going to give us a little bit more information on a sneak peek, I think, as we mentioned earlier.
Thanks, Ricky. Hi, everybody. My name is Chica Offram. As you've heard, I am the Director of Audience Development for American Experience, which just means that I set and implement strategy around marketing, promotion, engagement, and outreach for all of our individual films, as well as the overall brand. Looking forward to sharing with you what we're planning for season 35. And then later on, you're going to get a sneak peek of some of those films that are currently in production. So we are at this point, we just finished an incredible season. You saw some of the shows that we presented for the first time: The History of Genes, Pioneering Black Diplomats. We didn't talk about Plague at the Golden Gate, which was about the outbreak of the bubonic plague in 1900 in San Francisco, and more. You did hear from a couple of my colleagues that we do have one more new film coming up this fall in November, and you'll get to see a sneak peek of that as well. But once we're done there, we're moving on to our season that begins in January of 2023 with 9 brand new films. We'll also be bringing back several films from our archive as part of the season, loved favorites from old. We will also be making sure that on a regular basis, usually we change it out monthly, we make sure that we offer over 20 films to be streamed at any time by anyone on our website and in the PBS video app. PBS Passport members get access to many more film titles, but they're usually recent films and things that we have brought back that people have let us know. Actually, we do actually read our emails and respond to those requests to bring back old films, and as we re-up those, we make them available to you to stream. In addition, we're going to continue producing and developing original exclusive digital content for our website, including short films, explainer videos, comics, articles, all kinds of new and engaging ways to go deeper into the history, its impact, and its legacy. We will continue our monthly virtual events series, Pass Forward. I hope you've checked out at least one. They're incredible. We conduct them live on YouTube, and then they are archived for later use. We've got over 20 conversations that we've done over the past 2 years, and we do them monthly. So it's definitely something that you want to participate in. It allows us to take the history and themes that we explore in our films and bring it into present day. So usually really like charged conversations and really, really fun to participate in. We're bringing back live events. Live events are finally back in select markets across the country. In addition, we're going to work with your local station to help present events in those markets. We can't be everywhere, but we do partner with our member stations to make as much of the content and the opportunities to have these in-person conversations possible. And we'll continue to look at the ways we do hybrid events, since we know that most people find the virtual events much more accessible than being in person or traveling to a certain city or certain location. Finally, we're going to continue with our expanded partnerships and collaborations with history museums, presidential libraries, and history-focused organizations such as National History Day. To keep up with everything that we're doing, I encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. If you go to pbs.org/American Experience, you're going to get a sign up pop up immediately, and you can just enter in your information. You'll be on the list, and you'll hear about all the new upcoming films, old stuff that we've been refreshing and updating, and any events that are taking place either in person or online. So now it's my pleasure to share with you an exclusive sneak peek of season 35. But first, I'm going to give you a little bit of a peek at what's coming up in November 14th and 15th, our latest film, Taken Hostage.
This fall, American Experience is bringing audiences diverse and compelling stories from all corners of American history. First, director Robert Stone's epic examination of the Iran hostage crisis, 444 days that would transform the United States, Iran, and American foreign policy.
The hostages are in our hands. In the case of any military intervention, we will destroy them.
I said to myself, why am I a prisoner? Why me?
This was the first American foreign policy crisis televised live from start to stop.
It was like being a reporter with a camera crew at the French Revolution.
It had an impact across the Muslim world. And that has affected us ever since.
And coming next season in 2023, an intimate and gripping account of the fight for and against school desegregation.
The civil rights movement came to Boston, June 1963.
They were throwing eggs at the window and try to hit people with them.
Busing. I don't want nothing to do with it.
The majority of the parents are opposed to forced busing.
The crowd was so violent. All I could think of was what would happen if I didn't make it to the bus.
This bizarre situation of outright racism in Boston must stop.
When I reported to Kevin White on opening day that no black child had been killed, we thought that was a victory. It was the saddest day in Boston's history.
Next, the little-known story of a safe haven for cross-dressing men, whose very existence was a crime.
It will have to be word of mouth. It was illegal in this country.
You know, if someone was perceived as being gay, it was a crime. They were rolling the dice every time that they became their alter ego.
Coming here made me realize that this was really how I needed to be.
I just loved it being here. I had total freedom, total chance to be themselves for change.
Then next,
this device called a polygraph measures emotional response.
The dark history behind the infamous creation that became the nation's mechanical conscience.
The lie detector purportedly allows us to see what our bodies are trying to conceal.
It's used by the CIA. It's used by Hollywood to investigate people's emotional responses while they watch the movies. It's used to out people as homosexuals.
And then,
favorite Monopoly token? The hat, the top hat,
the car,
the thimble,
the hat. Yeah.
It's one of America's favorite board games.
It's a game about money. It's a game about power. It's a game about real estate.
But its origin is not as simple as you might think.
She designs this game. She's done all the hard work. And then this person steals the concept.
The game was intended to show the evils of monopolistic control.
And then the irony is that Parker Brothers want a monopoly on Monopoly.
And you know her as a literary giant of the Harlem Renaissance, but there's another side. American Experience profiles Zora Neale Hurston, whose groundbreaking work in the field of anthropology helped reclaim, honor, and celebrate African-American life on its own terms.
It always does that. I wish I could talk. There's so much I want to share about each of those titles. They're all so great and exciting, but that's just half of what we're planning for you for next year. We've got a few more titles. I didn't have clips to show you yet, but I wanted to share them with you. First up is The Sun Queen. It's the story of biophysicist and inventor Maria Telkis, whose prodigious intellect and energies, she bent them to harness the power of the sun. It was her life's ambition to find ways to heat, cool, and power homes by solar energy. And she actually designed and built the first successfully solar powered house in Dover, Massachusetts in 1949. So that's going to be a really interesting story. In The War on Disco, we look at how disco's roots lay in gay urban subculture, and the artists who created it were largely African-American, Hispanic, and Latino. In the gay dance clubs where it flourished, disco was much more than music. It was an expression of gay pride and a statement about lifestyle. This film explores the cultural movement that gave rise to disco music and the backlash that tried to destroy it. In the Kerner Report, we look at a period in the 1960s where racial unrest had engulfed Black urban communities across the country. And in 1967 was on pace to be the most violent summer yet, with racial disorders already reported in 70 cities. That year, President Johnson appointed an 11-member commission to find out what happened, why it happened, and what could be done to prevent it from happening in the future. This film will explore the evidence and the experiences that led the commission to its then shocking conclusions and provide vital perspective on the ongoing struggle for racial equity in America. And last but not least, The Harvest. So you saw the promo, the clip for Boston School Battle. This film tells a story, a different type of story about the same issues from the South. This is a personal and powerful look at one Southern town's struggle to integrate its public schools in the late 60s. The film follows the first class to share racially mixed classrooms in Leland, Mississippi, from the opening day of first grade all the way through 12th grade. For many students, the benefits were enormous. Decades later, however, most schools in the racially diverse neighborhoods were once again deeply segregated. The Harvest will look at how the children, their town, and the country inherited this mixed legacy of America's efforts to racially integrate public schools. And this film will be paired with Boston School Battle. They'll air together one night back to back as a deep exploration into the history and legacy and impact of our efforts to integrate schools from the 60s onward. Also to note, we do plan on mounting a significant outreach and engagement campaign to support both of these films. So look out for that. Not sure when that's going to launch yet, but it will probably going to launch like mid-spring. You'll start to see a lot of activity with your local station. So keep your eye out for that. Next slide. And that's it. There you have it. Note that our titles aren't final. The only titles that are final are obviously Taken Hostage because it's airing at the end of in November, and Casa Susana is final. But it's been such a treat sharing this exclusive sneak peek of all of the fun, fascinating, and challenging topics we'll be exploring next year. Thanks for all that you do, and I hope that the work that we do at American Experience can continue to inspire and support the work that you're doing with students. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Carolyn. Thank you.
And thank you, Chika. We're going to be, our team and Chika, hopefully Chika, I haven't confirmed this, you're going to be at NCSS in Philadelphia in December. And we will be having an event, a session around Taken Hostage. We hope to have some special guests and a panel discussion, and that's one of many sessions that we have at NCSS. So thank you very much. All right, we're winding down, but I wanted to spend a little bit of time and get us back into PBS Learning Media, where you find all of these resources that we've been sharing with you. I want to go live on the site and show you the new U.S. history collection that I mentioned at the very beginning. So let's get a new tab open here. Okay, good. All right, here we go. All right, so I'm on just pbslearningmedia.org, and I'm going to search U.S. history. And this is the U.S. history collection that I want to show you. The U.S. history collection is brand new. It is in the works. It has many resources published, many more are to come. So we encourage you to check it out now, but to also come back often and see what else is there. There will be eventually 360 resources in the collection, and it will be finalized at the end of the year. We just did a launch in August to get everyone started, and we continue to publish resources on it every week. The collection are curated clips from PBS programs such as American Experience, and also a very diverse array of media and interactive resources, all designed to develop students' historical thinking skills while broadening their appreciation of history's multiple perspectives and complexity. The collection, as I mentioned, is under development, and there are a couple of ways to search through it. So I mentioned that there are going to be a few hundred resources eventually, and one of the ways that you can search is within the collection page, right in this search bar right here. So if you search here, you are not going to the whole PBS Learning Media platform, you are searching within the collection. So let's take a look at the home page, and I'm just going to scroll down for a little bit. I want to point out a few important features. You can browse by historical era, and there are 16 historical eras, and these should be familiar with you as social studies teachers. And you can also browse by historical thinking skill to hopefully locate what you're looking for quickly and easily. Our goal is to give you a very consistent experience throughout the collection. You've heard Elizabeth and Nikki both talk about teaching tips, and I want to show you how that looks in the U.S. history collection, as well as some other of the resources. So we're going to go to, for example, Gilded Age. I'm going to click on this era, and then I'm going to click on Industrial Leadership and Ideology, and then choose this resource, Defining the Era. Now note that you see video here, you see media gallery here. You might also see interactive lesson, etc. So this is where you get a little hint about what kind of resource you're going to be seeing. So I'm just going to click on Defining the Era of the Gilded Age. Note that this is a approximately 2-minute clip. Again, we know that teachers cannot show the whole documentary often. So we are creating clips that are typically 3 to 6 minutes. And then we are coupling them with support materials and many other things to help you really flesh out a lesson. So over here on the right-hand side is where you will find the support materials. This is where they always will be. I'm going to click on Teaching Tips real quickly and show you again the essential question, supporting questions, the historical thinking skills. And in the teaching tips, there are very rich suggestions for before, during, and after viewing. All resources in the U.S. history collection will have teaching tips. Then I'm going to go to the next support material, and that is discussion questions. Okay, so the discussion questions, typically there are 3 to 5 of those. And again, they are consistent across the collection, trying to really prepare you for what you will find and so that there are no surprises. Next is a background reading. The background readings, there are background readings for about 25% of the resources in the collection. They're all titled, they have an essential question, they have vocabulary support, they include images to make them more attractive and engaging for students and adults, and they are written on about a 9th grade reading level. And the last support material that I'm going to show you, and Elizabeth mentioned one of these, is the independent student activity. About 50% of the resources will have independent student activities that focus on an historical thinking skill. Of course, they include an essential question, and these are appropriate to be assigned for homework in class. And they're really designed to be low maintenance for the teacher, where the title says it all, independent student activity. And all of these support materials, we encourage you to, you can print them out and edit them and really make them work for you in your classroom. All right, I'm just going to do a couple of announcements as we are at our time here. And then I'm going to check in with Nikki and invite the presenters to come back on camera. And if they have any final words, or we can respond to any questions that are in the chat. So we have had, we are at the tail end of a series of webinars that are drawn on the new U.S. history collection of PBS Learning Media. And all of these have been recorded, and you have the recording links for them. The first one was in March, and it was looking at historic images to teach multiple perspectives. The second was using historical fiction, and we had a very special guest and author, Lori Halls-Anderson, who has written many YA historical fiction books, and is the author of American Seed, the trilogy about the American Revolution. It was fabulous. And then we just recently had a webinar that featured our social studies team, and they showed some highly engaging interactives that are a part of the collection, different kinds of resources beyond the video clips. And coming up in October, I'm thrilled to announce, and the registration link is there, that we are going to have a webinar around the idea of using material culture to encourage students to understand that history is around them, that they are history makers, looking at artifacts that have stories behind them. And we are working with the author, Dr. Tia Miles, who is at Harvard, but she is the author of All That She Carried, which won the National Book Award for nonfiction and also the top 10 books for the New York Times. And we are thrilled to have her. She will be on the call talking about the importance of material culture. As I mentioned, we are going to be at NCSS. We will be in the exhibit hall. We will also have multiple sessions. We hope that we're so looking forward to being in person finally, and we hope to see many of you there. And please stop by the booth and say hello to us. And we're also going to the Massachusetts Council for Social Studies, their conference, which is in on Cape Cod in October for any of you who are local. This is the link to the post-webinar survey. It's not that long, and we really appreciate you taking it. Gives us good feedback, which we pay very close attention to. It can be anonymous if you would like, but we really look for comments from you that we can pass along. And after you finish the survey, you can download a certificate that acknowledges your attendance tonight. All right, so you are welcome to email me with any questions or comments. I will get you to the right person if I'm not able to answer you. And then Nikki, I want to invite you or any of the other presenters who want to come back on camera. And if there's anything in the chat that we really should pay attention to, or if there are new questions that are popping up. Anything from Nikki? I know that Elizabeth is under the weather, so I hope. No? Okay. I hope Elizabeth logged off and I hope she's taking a nap now. She's a little under the weather. Okay. Some of the questions that you asked in the registration form related to Schoology and integration with other platforms beyond Google Classroom. And I would encourage you to spend a little bit of time. Schoology, yes, we do work with Schoology. If you go on the website, let me find a window where I can show you the website again. All right, so I'm on the homepage of PBS Learning Media. And if you just scroll down to the bottom, there's a help tab right here. And it's a very comprehensive help menu. And you will find directions about using Remind, which I think, Ricky, you mentioned that you use, and also Schoology, Google Classroom, etc. And then many other things, ways to save resources, organize them into folders, etc. Okay, great. All right. Well, then I am going to invite you.
Carolyn, we've got a couple questions coming in actually in the Q&A.
Okay, good, good. Okay.
Yeah. There was one question about can schools purchase a passport account so a whole school can access some of the American Experience documentaries in full?
So I don't know directly, but the passport is, it's a member benefit. So if you or an organization or community or family are a member of your local station, one of the benefits is getting access to a larger array of films from American Experience, as well as Nova, Nature, a bunch of other national series that you would see on PBS. So in theory, I would think that a school or school system could be a member, but I don't know how that would work. I think it might be a good idea to try and contact membership at your local station and see how that might work with them, because you would be essentially become a member of your local PBS station, and then you would get access to all of that content.
And then Chica, would you remind people again, you mentioned this, I just want to make sure, because this is a question we get often about streaming full episodes of American Experience, how that, that rotation and where they go for that.
Sure. So if you go to the American Experience website, pbs.org/American Experience, and you'll be able to click on the tab that says films. It'll let you know which films are accessible to all, no membership required. The films that are available to stream but require passport membership will have a little compass symbol next to it. So it's very clear which ones can be accessed by anyone and which ones require I think it's actually a base level membership to your local station to access. So we make somewhere between 20 and 25 films available each month outside of the passport environment so that anyone can access them, and you can stream that on your computer, on your desktop. We know that people stream them on mobile. I don't know how. That's not a way that I would prefer to watch, but some people do. And then you can also use your over-the-top device like a Roku or an Apple TV. You just download the PBS video app and you're able to watch through there. So that's how you access the films. We do rotate them. I would say 50% of them stay constant. If we have a new film that premieres, the film is available immediately for streaming and usually has a 30-day window before it becomes a passport member benefit.
And just by virtue of you being here on the webinar and having our contact information, if you have a special circumstance and you wanted some information about where to find something or when it's coming up, whatever, feel free to let me know. Chica and her team are very accommodating, and we know that teachers need to plan, and so we can be in touch. Okay, Nikki, another burning question.
Yes, another one in the Q&A. In the teaching lessons, are there topics to develop a debate between students to assist in understanding the reasons events happened in history?
Ricky, do you have any comment about that? Because I think that that is spread throughout the resources.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of a resource off the top of my head that like perfectly sets that up, but I think that, you know, I think almost all of the resources that I've ever used on here provide the opportunity to have that debate. Most of the resources, or all of them that I've worked with, are not just one-sided. There's always multiple ways to think through and to have conversations about that content. And so I think depending on what you were looking for, I think those discussion questions might be a great place to start, because if you're scanning through those, you could see, oh, well, this would be a great way to set up a debate. And maybe it's an extension activity that comes from that. But I think all the resources, depending on the topic you're looking at, are set up in a way that you could potentially create your own debate, even if it wasn't necessarily built into the lesson.
Yeah, and then I would add that in the new U.S. History collection, there is a type of resource called You Decide, and it very specifically gives you two sides to an argument. Because the collection is new, I don't have I think there's one about Truman. I don't have them off the top of my head, but Nikki, we have the contact information for who asked that, and I'll make sure that I respond to them individually. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very, very much, everybody. Elizabeth, feel better. Thank you very much for coming. And Ricky, always a pleasure to have teachers be a part of our work. I know it's the end of a long day for you, and we really appreciate you doing this and sharing your insights. And Chica, wonderful working with you, and very exciting about everything that's coming up. And so thank you to everyone for coming and spending some time with us. We wish you well this year and hope to see you on another webinar. Thank you very much. I'll leave the chat open for just another minute and then close things out. Thank you.